Hi everyone, my name's Ian Gibbs. I'm the Director of Data Leadership and Learning at JICMAIL, and I'm going to be walking you through a short training module on how to extract planning insight from the JICMAIL database. In this module, we're going to be focusing on how to run a basic query in the JICMAIL audience database. Okay, so just as a reminder, the audience database is a person-centric database. It's nationally representative, it's grossed up to population figures. And there are kind of two applications to the JICMAIL audience database. We use it for plugging in client target audiences and figuring out how they're interacting with DM and door drops. And we also use it for uncovering those hidden target audiences that you might not otherwise have considered when planning mail. Now, in terms of running a basic run, so let's have a look at the codebook. So just to remind you, you can access JICMAIL data via Telmar, Choices and IMS. The data is pretty much laid out exactly the same in all three of those systems. So we'll just have a quick look at the codebook now before we run a basic run. So as you can see, you can select basic demographic variables to define your target audience. So gender, age, got social grade here. We can look at household type, whether it's single or multi-person. We can also look at household size. We can look at whether there are children in the household or not. We can also look at region. So as of our next data release in November, you'll be able to look at ITV regions along with these broader regions as well. We can also look at whether the household is in a rural urban area. Tenure length, so how long someone's lived at their house, and also whether someone is a homeowner or they rent. On top of that, we have Geo Demographics, so Mosaic, and as of next quarter, we'll have Acorn added in there as well. So what I'm going to do is, as with all these planning bureau systems, you can combine these variables to make different target audiences. For example, we can look at men aged 35 to 44, if we AND those together. What I'm actually going to do for now is just look at a really simple target audience comparison, just men versus women. I'm going to drop those into our columns here. So just a reminder what this is showing us. So in the row here it says audience. So essentially we're looking at 65.6 million people in the population, of which 32.3 million are men and 33.2 million are women. In terms of our sample sizes in the JICMAIL audience database, so we have 26,326 responses overall, of which 12.6 thousand are men and 13.6 thousand are women. Now, once you've defined your target audience, the next thing you want to do is pull out a specific mail type. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to mail audience and frequency. And to begin with, we're just going to look at it at the very top level. We're going to look at it, so you can look at it for DM, which is addressed advertising. You can look at it for door drops, or you can look at it for business. Now, you'll notice that for each of these mail types, there's two variables that you can drop into the data. We have door drops audience, for example, and door drops frequency. The audience variable is essentially used for assessing exposure and figuring out how likely your audience are to be exposed to mail in the first place. And frequency, as the name suggests, looks at how often they are returning to that mail item. So just to look at a comparison between those two, we're going to drop door drop audience and frequency into our rows. And in terms of how we read this data, what we're seeing here is 3.9 million men have been exposed to door drops in the last week, and 7.8 million women have. In terms of sample size, this equates to 1,224 men in our database and 3,348 women. In terms of the percentages, well, as always, with column percentages, you read them upwards first. So this means that 12.1% of men have been exposed to door drops in the last week, and 23.6% of women have been exposed to door drops. In terms of row percentages, well, as always, you would read those sideways first. So this means that 33.2% of those people who've been exposed to door drops in the last week, well, they're men. And obviously all that's left in the population are women then. So 66.8% of those people exposed to door drops in the last week are women. The really crucial variable I would say here in terms of your planning is this index of exposure. So this tells us how likely an audience is to be exposed to that mail item in the first place. And there's a couple of factors which feed into this. Obviously targeting is a factor, depending on whether or not a mail item has been delivered to a specific home. But also pass on is a factor, whether the household coordinator has passed on this mail item to someone in the house. So what this means is, so an index of 100 represents the average person in the UK. So an index of 67 for men means that men are 33% less likely than the average person in the UK to be exposed to door drops. Women, on the other hand, with an index of 132, they're 32% more likely than the average person in the UK to be exposed to door drops. Just as a reminder, JICMAIL uses the household coordinator to measure all mail exposures. The household coordinator is generally responsible for picking up the mail off the doormat every day and sorting through all the mail. And I'm afraid gender stereotypes exist here, so 70% of all household coordinators are women, which is why we tend to see higher exposure levels for pretty much all mail types amongst women than men. But we'll have a look in a later module as to how we unpick specific insight around that male target audience. Now, if we look at the frequency variable now, you want to disregard all the numbers here apart from these ones. So these numbers tell us about frequency of exposure. And what this means is, this means that this 2.71 tells us that the frequency with which door drops are interacted with over a four-week period is 2.71. For men, well, they interact with door drops 2.6 times on average over the course of a 4-week period, and for women it's 2.76. So overall, this picture is telling us that women are more likely to be exposed to door drops and they're interacting with them slightly more frequently than men are. And that's how you run a basic query in the JICMAIL audience database.